Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. Trump and MAGA are celebrating the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. But behind the spin, this bill is ugly and evil. So let me give you the truth about this big, ugly, brutal bill. First, it will increase the national debt by over $4 trillion. It locks in permanent tax cuts for the richest Americans. It gives Trump more funding and power to implement his white nationalist Project 2025 agenda. And it does all of this by gutting support for the poorest Americans. These are my four biggest problems with this bill. And that's what I want to get into in this video. Each one of these four issues that I have with this bill is dangerous on its own. And together, talking about dangerous on their own, together they are a direct threat to democracy and working people. Let's break this down. Where does this big, beautiful bill stand right now? Well, the House passed the original bill back on May 22nd by a vote of 215 to 214. It barely made it out of the House. One Republican abstained. And then on July 1st, the Senate passed their amended version, 51 to 50, with J.D. Vance breaking the tie. Now the bill is back in the House. House leadership passed a rule to allow final debate. That rule passed 219 to 213. Hakeem Jeffries stalled the inevitable with a record-setting House speech. That is over now, and a final vote is expected any moment if it hasn't already occurred. And that's because Trump pressured MAGA to get this done by tomorrow, July 4th. So let's look at what's inside this dangerous legislation. The Senate version of this bill will add $4.1 trillion to the national debt over the next decade, according to the Congressional Budget Office. So that is not speculation. That's not me. Again, that is the CBO, the official nonpartisan scorekeeper. The debt to GDP ratio will hit 124% by 2034. Even the conservative Cato Institute warns the final cost could reach $6 trillion once you include interest. And they call this fiscal responsibility. No, this is fiscal sabotage. In the center of the whole thing, the center of this bill, is this gigantic permanent tax cut from Trump's 2017 law. So let's ask, who benefits from this? Because it's certainly not working people. According to the Tax Policy Center, over 45% of the benefits of this big, ugly bill will go to households making more than $450,000. The top 1%, they get more than 80% of the gains. Meanwhile, the poorest 20%, they lose ground. They lose big. The Washington Center for Equitable Growth reports their incomes, the working poor, will drop by 3.8%. Folks, that's evil. All while the top 20% see income rise by nearly the same amount. This is wealth consolidation. This is snatching up wealth in the name of the law. So it's not tax relief. This bill also gives Trump's executive branch more power and more money to do what we see them doing. That's dangerous because of Project 2025, which is MAGA's blueprint to reshape the entire federal government. It includes reclassifying tens of thousands of workers under Schedule F so Trump can fire them and install loyalists throughout the federal government, which he has already started doing. It also centralizes executive control. And we see MAGA all the way up to the Supreme Court wants to give the executive branch extreme power and control. And this also will enable Trump to dismantle agencies that protect civil rights, voting rights, the environment, and so on. And do remember, it was the Heritage Foundation, a right-wing nonprofit, which wrote Project 2025 and wants to purge the federal government. So what they want to do is impose a far-right Christian nationalist agenda. Now, I'm a committed Christian, but I am not a Christian nationalist. And I don't want to see a far-right Christian nationalist agenda take over this country. Groups like Protect Democracy and the Center for American Progress are sounding the alarm. And even people like myself, again, who is a committed Christ follower, a preacher, a member of the clergy. But I know this bill gives Trump the tools to make the country experience a nightmare, really. And again, you gotta ask the question, who pays for all of this? Well, let me tell you, the next generation will pay for the debt. And the poorest Americans will suffer now. 12 million people could lose Medicaid due to new work requirements. And don't get sucked in with these new work requirements, based on the GOP saying, what's wrong with working? There is nothing wrong with working. In fact, most of the people who receive Medicaid are already working, or they have legal reasons not to be working. So it's just a trick. This is an attack on the working poor. So 2 million of these people could lose food assistance from SNAP. And the bill also rolls back some of the Affordable Care Act subsidies and other safety net programs. What is the result of this? More hunger, more uninsured working families, more people pushed into poverty. The poorest 20% will see the largest income drop, while the richest keeps climbing, growing, and prospering at the expense of the poorest. Again, this bill is ugly and evil. You could say that it really punishes the poor. And then MAGA makes the argument, the bogus argument, that the bill reduces the deficit. That's a lie. Their argument is based on something economists call inflated growth predictions, which most of those same economists reject. The CBO and the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget say the numbers simply don't add up. Even the Conservative Tax Foundation admits the bill adds nearly $3 trillion to the deficit. So there's just no way for MAGA to call this, with a straight face, fiscally sound. So let's be clear. This bill is anything except beautiful. It's what I call brutal. It's ugly. It's evil. And just remember, it raises the debt on all of us, especially future generations of America. And we're talking about a debt that's already $37 trillion. And add $4 more trillion to it simply to reward the rich and to hand more power to authoritarianism and to make the poor pay for it. If this bill passes, and it probably will, if it hasn't already, we all pay the price. Every single one of us. So, what, if anything, we can do? Well, at this moment, very little. I would say call your Congress member, but again, they're getting ready to vote on this really soon. But do it anyway. Maybe there's time to still just bombard the phones of the House members to get them to hear from us that we don't like this. I would ordinarily say something like, show up at their offices, but by the time you get there, this thing will be over. We've been trying to flood town halls, but that's not going to work at this point. So we got to look in the future. We got to look ahead. We got to look to the 2026 midterms. I'm calling that putting boots on the ground in 2026. We've been putting a whole lot of boots on the ground over the past couple of months, having a good time. I understand it. We all, especially us African Americans, just needed to sort of detox and decompress. I just want that same energy about a year from now as we're gearing up to go to the polls for the 2026 midterm elections. So, folks, we don't have the luxury to make the mistakes and get bamboozled as we have over the last decade. We got to do better. We got to reject the disinformation. Flat out reject it. We got to get registered. We got to vote. You know, I've told you many times, and I will repeat it and continue to repeat it. Over 2 million people, blacks, voted for Trump. Over 2 million. And millions of African Americans didn't vote. And we don't have the luxury of continuing to do that in the future. Because we see what happens. When we don't show up, we end up with the big, ugly bill saddled on our backs. So, by now this thing is probably already passed. So let this be fire for you to gear up for the 2026 midterms. Because a lot of those people who will lose Medicaid benefits, a lot of them disproportionately will be Black Americans. All right? I am Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Thank you for watching this video. And remember, stay woke.